Amelia stood by the grand entrance of the estate, clutching a worn cleaning brush in her frozen hands. Her former husband, a powerful businessman whose name appeared in every financial magazine, walked past her without even recognizing her. But every evening his little son would quietly press against her apron and whisper, "Why are your eyes always sad, miss?" She never found the courage to answer him honestly. What happened afterward changed the lives of everyone in that house forever. Before we begin, write in the comments which city you're watching from. And at the end, rate this story from 1 to 10. Enjoy the story. A cleaning rag instead of a wedding ring. Amelia stared at her hands. Once they had worn elegant rings decorated with diamonds and white gold. Now the skin was rough from icy water and cheap soap, cracked at the fingertips, stained by endless work. She stood in front of a luxurious mansion in the heart of London. Black iron gates, marble stairs, tall windows hidden behind heavy curtains. The house looked like a palace. Or perhaps a prison. An older woman with sharp eyes opened the door and studied Amelia from head to toe. "So you're the new housemaid?" Amelia nodded quietly. "My name is Margaret. I manage everything in this house. You follow instructions, keep silent, and stay invisible. Understood?" "Yes." Amelia stepped inside. The scent of polished wood and expensive perfume hit her instantly. Crystal chandeliers glimmered above her head. Paintings in golden frames covered the walls. Everything felt painfully familiar. And painfully cozy. She lowered her eyes. No memories. No looking back. "The owner dislikes servants getting in his way," Margaret continued. "Work quickly. Quietly. Don't attract attention." That suited Amelia perfectly. Being unseen hurt less than being recognized. Margaret showed her a tiny room beside the laundry area. One narrow bed. One small wardrobe. One window facing the garden. Amelie placed her old bag on the floor. Everything she owned in life fit inside it. After changing into the maid's uniform, black dress, white apron, she stared at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back no longer resembled the person she used to be. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled of coffee and warm bread. Margaret handed her a list of chores. Clean the upper floor. Prepare the guest rooms. Wash the bathrooms. Amelia carried a bucket upstairs. At the end of the corridor stood a door that made her stop breathing. She knew that door. Behind it was the bedroom where she had once woken every morning beside the man she loved. Slowly she entered. The room was almost unchanged. The same enormous bed. The same curtains. The same scent of cedarwood and clean linen. Amelia closed her eyes. "Don't remember. Just work." She knelt and began scrubbing the floor mechanically. Then laughter echoed from downstairs. A deep male voice followed. Confident, calm, familiar. Her heart nearly stopped. "Ethan." She heard his footsteps approaching. Beside him walked a woman with bright laughter and expensive heels. They talked about business meetings and some upcoming gala. Amelia quickly turned toward the window. They passed the room. Ethan didn't even glance at her. To him she was only another servant. Another invisible woman in his home. That evening, after hours of work, Margaret handed Amelia a plate of dinner. "Tomorrow you'll prepare breakfast for the young master," she said. "He likes pancakes with honey." Amelia froze. "The young master?" Margaret nodded. "Daniel, Mr. Carter's son." Amelia's chest tightened so painfully she could barely breathe. Daniel, her son. That night she lay awake listening to distant footsteps and doors closing upstairs. 3 years. 3 years without seeing him. When she left, he had still been small enough to fall asleep in her arms. Now he was old enough to ask questions. And tomorrow he would look at her. Without knowing she was his mother. Morning arrived in silence. Amelia stood in the kitchen before sunrise, preparing pancake batter from memory. Once she had cooked for her family. Now she cooked for strangers. Then she heard small footsteps descending the stairs. Her hands froze. A little boy appeared in the doorway. Messy blonde hair. Huge hazel eyes. Pajamas covered in tiny airplanes. Amelia forgot how to breathe. Daniel had grown taller. But his eyes were still the same. He tilted his head. "Are you new here?" Amelia nodded slowly. "Yes." "Where's Miss Clara?" "She doesn't work here anymore." Daniel walked closer, studying her carefully. "You look familiar." Amelia forced herself to smile faintly. "I don't think so." "But you do," he insisted. "I know you from somewhere." She quickly placed pancakes on a plate. Sit down before breakfast gets cold. Daniel sat at the table but continued staring at her. Then he said softly, "You smell like my mom." The spoon slipped from Amelia's fingers and crashed onto the floor. "My dad says she went far away," Daniel continued quietly. "But I still remember her." Amelia bent to pick up the spoon before he could see her tears. "Eat, sweetheart." From that morning on, Daniel followed her everywhere. While she cleaned, he sat nearby asking endless questions. "Where did you live before? Do you have children? Why are you always sad?" Amelia answered carefully, never saying too much. But children notice what adults ignore. One evening Daniel approached her holding a toy train. "Will you play with me?" "I'm working. Please. Dad is always busy." She looked into his lonely eyes and finally gave in. For a few minutes they sat on the carpet rolling trains back and forth. Daniel laughed. Amelia nearly broke inside hearing that sound again. Then he suddenly touched her sleeve. "Why do you cry whenever you look at me?" She quickly wiped her eyes. "I'm not crying." "Yes, you are." Before she could answer, a cold voice cut through the room. "What's happening here?" Ethan stood in the doorway wearing a dark suit. Daniel ran toward him happily. "We were playing." But Ethan's gaze remained fixed on Amelia. "You were hired to work, not entertain my son." "I'm sorry." "Daniel, go upstairs." The boy hesitated before leaving. Ethan stepped closer to Amelia. Too close. "I don't want you becoming attached to him," he said coldly. "You are staff. Nothing more." Amelia lowered her eyes. "I understand." That night she lay awake again. Then she heard crying. Soft. Broken. Childish. Daniel. Without thinking, she hurried upstairs. He sat in bed clutching a pillow, tears covering his cheeks. "I want my mommy," he whispered. Amelia sat beside him and held him tightly. "I know, sweetheart." He buried himself against her as if he already recognized the truth somewhere deep inside. Then the bedroom door suddenly opened. Ethan stood there. His expression turned to stone. "What are you doing here?" Amelia slowly stood from the bed. He was crying. Ethan stared at her for a long moment. Something changed in his eyes. Confusion. Shock. Recognition. His voice became almost a whisper. "Amelia?" She couldn't answer. He stepped closer. "It's really you?" Slowly, painfully, she nodded. Ethan released a shaky breath and stepped backward as though the floor beneath him had disappeared. "How did you end up here?" "I work here. As a maid? I didn't know this was your house." He laughed bitterly. What a coincidence. Daniel looked between them, confused. "Dad, do you know her?" Ethan's face hardened instantly. "No, but you said her name." "Go to sleep, Daniel." After the child finally lay down, Ethan ordered Amelia to leave. She walked out trembling, but behind the coldness in his eyes she had seen something else. Pain. The next morning Ethan summoned her to his office. Dark wood shelves surrounded the room. Rain tapped against the windows. "There are two options," he said calmly. "You leave today and never come back." Amelia swallowed hard. "And the second? You stay here." She stared at him in disbelief. "But Daniel must never know who you are." The words struck like ice. "He deserves stability," Ethan continued. "To him, you'll remain a housemaid. Nothing more. I'm his mother. You lost that right when you disappeared." Amelia's hands trembled violently. "I didn't abandon him. I don't want explanations." Then he placed a document before her. A contract. It forbade her from revealing the truth to Daniel. Amelia read the words through blurred vision. Cruel. Humiliating. But leaving would mean losing her son forever. So with shaking hands, she signed. Tears stained the ink. Days passed. Amelia worked silently while Daniel continued growing attached to her. One evening Ethan brought home an elegant woman named Victoria. Beautiful. Confident. Perfect. Amelia watched them together from the kitchen and felt something sharp twist inside her chest. During dinner Daniel hid behind Amelia's back instead of greeting Victoria. "She doesn't like me," Victoria complained. "He's just shy," Amelia answered softly. Ethan's gaze lingered on Amelia longer than it should have. Later that night Amelia sat alone in the kitchen crying quietly. "I'm sorry," she whispered into the darkness. "I'm sorry I can't be your mother." She didn't realize Ethan was standing in the doorway listening. For the first time in years, guilt began destroying him. Everything changed the following weekend. Daniel burst into the kitchen holding an old photograph. Look what I found. Amelia's blood ran cold. The photo showed her and Ethan years earlier, smiling in the garden. Young, happy, in love. Daniel stared between the photo and Amelia. That's you, with my dad. Amelia couldn't lie anymore. Yes. His voice trembled. Are you, my mother? Silence filled the room. Then tears rolled down Amelia's face. Yes. Daniel threw himself into her arms. I knew it, he cried. I always knew it. At that exact moment Ethan entered the room. He saw the photograph on the floor. Saw Daniel clinging to Amelia. And understood everything. What did you do? He demanded. He found the picture, Amelia whispered. I couldn't lie to him. You promised me. He's my son. You abandoned him. Amelia finally shouted back. No. I was forced to leave. Ethan froze. What? Her voice broke. Ask your mother. The truth exploded between them. Years earlier, Ethan's mother had convinced Amelia that Ethan no longer loved her. She threatened divorce, custody battles, and humiliation. She paid Amelia to disappear. And Ethan never received the letters Amelia wrote afterward. Because his mother hid every single one. When Ethan learned the truth, his entire world shattered. He confronted his mother that same night. Then he found the hidden letters. Stacks of them. Every page filled with love, heartbreak, and desperate longing. For the first time in years, Ethan cried. Not quietly. Not with dignity. Like a broken man who finally understood how much he had lost. 2 days later, he found Amelia living in a tiny apartment on the edge of the city. He stood outside her door for hours. I was wrong, he whispered through the wood. Please let me explain. At first she refused. Then he mentioned the letters. Silence followed. Finally the lock clicked open. Amelia stood there exhausted and pale. Ethan looked at her as though she were the only thing keeping him alive. I never stopped loving you, he said. She turned away. That doesn't erase the years I lost with my son. I know. He fell to his knees before her. Then let me spend the rest of my life trying to fix it. Amelia wanted to forgive him. But pain does not disappear in a single night. A week later Daniel ran away from the mansion and arrived at Amelia's apartment alone. I want my family back, he cried. Soon Ethan arrived too, terrified after searching the entire city. The three of them stood together in the tiny apartment surrounded by silence. Daniel held both their hands tightly. Please come home. Amelia looked at the man she once loved. At the child she loved more than life itself. And slowly, painfully, she agreed to return. Not as a servant. Not as a stranger. But as Daniel's mother. The healing was slow. Trust returned little by little. Ethan gave her space, patience, honesty. Every evening they ate dinner together as a family. Every night Daniel fell asleep smiling. And one quiet evening, while candles flickered across the dining room table, Ethan finally looked at Amelia and said, I spent years believing I lost you because you stopped loving me. Now I know I lost you because I was too blind to fight for you. Amelia looked into his eyes for a long time. Then, for the first time in years, she reached for his hand herself. Sometimes love survives betrayal. Sometimes truth arrives too late. And sometimes, even broken families find their way home again.